you have my guarantee that Killer Queen has not touched the subscribe button. Therefore, it is safe to push. Before we get into the review, I have a quick announcement. I have just opened up a community Guilded server. If you don't know what that is, that's understandable. Allow me to explain. So Guilded is a Discord competitor that brings all the same great features that you know and love, and more. Guilded offers a lot of the same benefits that you would expect from something like Discord Nitro, but for free. Also, it has a calendar for scheduling upcoming events a lot easier. So if you want a chill place to come and hang out, talk about anime or gaming or anything like that, I'll leave a link down in the description down below. Now back to your regularly scheduled JoJo's content. Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come once again to dive into another part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. And today we have Part 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. With it comes a new setting, cast of characters, a new art style, and a lot of chill vibes. In order to contrast Part 3's globe-trotting world adventure, Part 4 decides to go with something a bit different. This time, we're going to be hanging out in a little tiny town where not a whole lot usually goes on. And boy, did it exceed all of my expectations. While I wouldn't say I loved Battle Tendency and Stardust Crusaders, I did enjoy them quite a bit. But man, when I reached the end of Diamond is Unbreakable, I was so sad to know that that was it, that's all there is. We gotta go do something else now. So let's actually jump into the discussion of this part and talk about why I feel like it is the best one I've experienced so far. It is the year 1999, and Jotaro Kujo, the protagonist of Part 3 Stardust Crusaders, has arrived in the small little town of Morio, Japan. His reason for being here is that he is searching for an illegitimate family member, that being our new JoJo, Josuke. So it turns out that Josuke is the son of Joseph Joestar, who cheated on his wife and had a child, and now that child was raised by his single mother in Japan. Oh no! Which also means that the 16-year-old Josuke is the uncle of the 28-year-old Jotaro? You know what? I'm moving on. And it also turns out that Jotaro had a bit of a lead on some possible remaining stands that are just chilling out here in this town. And that turns out to be completely on point because almost immediately stand users start coming out of the woodwork, causing all sorts of shenanigans. In the mix though, we actually do learn how stands were created. It turns out there's a mysterious golden arrow and bow that are used to change the DNA of people and give them the stands somehow. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but it does explain how Dio got his stand back in Part 3. But now the question remains, where the hell did these magical bows and arrows come from? They're not tied to the Pillar Men like the masks were, are they? I'm sure that would get explained later on. But while that whole ordeal is being dealt with by Josuke, Jotaro, and a couple other friends, there's a more sinister development going on in the background. So we come to learn that for the past 15 years, there had been a serial killer working inside of Moro, taking out all kinds of victims without being caught. Eventually, our heroes come to meet this serial killer named Kira. No, not this one. This one. So roughly the first half of the series is kind of slice of lifey, where our characters are just kind of going about their daily lives, and occasionally a stand user kind of pops up and there's kind of a wacky kind of fight that goes on. While on the other side, the other half of the series is a little bit more focused, and it's more about specifically we need to track down the killer, find his identity, and eventually, make sure he's done for good. And can I just say, things get absolutely bonkers once Kira starts getting cornered. He starts pulling out all kinds of just absurd moves and stand techniques that that's still blowing my mind. What I really enjoyed about this is we're not just seeing the story from the perspective of the good guys, we're also seeing a lot of the story play out from the perspective of Kira. So while you're never really rooting for Kira to get away, you kind of get to see inside of his head a little bit. You can kind of see where he's coming from, and he's pretty messed up. So to me, Part 4 is able to combine a lot of the absolute best aspects of Part 2 and 3 into one, and that is why it works so well for me. We get the advantage of a bit looser of a storytelling style, a little bit easier to hop into like the way part 3 was, but we also get a little bit more structure near the second half, a little bit more serialized if you want to really follow the narrative and the progression of the characters. But you know, I always say a story is only half as good as its characters, and the characters of part 4 are fantastic. So the first of the new characters we have up is Josuke, who in a way is a lot like his father Joseph. He's a bit mischievous and sometimes charming in a certain way, so that really plays to a lot of his strengths. And with that comes him being a stickler for his looks. For the love of God, whatever you do, do not insult his hair. Despite his personality though, Josuke's stand Crazy Diamond plays a good reflection of how he is. You see, Crazy Diamond is not an offensive stand in the same way that, say, Star Platinum was. Crazy Diamond is instead more of a healer or utility-based stand where it can heal anything it touches. More specifically, it repairs things to their original state. So over time, we get to see Josuke really start to experiment with this technique, and he's able to do some really creative things with it, like turning just inanimate objects into projectiles by having them go backwards, kind of back to the original position. It's kind of hard to explain, but it works really well in motion. And of course, accompanying our new JoJo, we have a couple of new Jo bros. This time around, we have Koichi and Okuyasu. Koichi would be a perfect example of the classic wimp to kind of underrated badass trope. Like, he's small for his age, he has a bit of an understated personality, but over time, and with his new stand ability, he comes to really be a contributing member of the team. I mean, for goodness sake, this guy literally goes Super Saiyan a couple of times throughout the series, and I don't even really know how that happens. Also, his stand is really cool. Its name is Reverb. First off, it actually evolves over time. Like, it starts off as a little egg, and then evolves into like a slug, and eventually it becomes more of a humanoid and has a different set of powers altogether. I don't know how that happens, but it's cool that now stands can evolve in a weird way. But talking specifically about the middle stage, its ability is to create onomatopoeias or description of sound effects and have those sound effects become real. Like, for example, Koichi could write the word pow on something using reverb, and then that something would experience the sensation of being like punched or hit. You know, pow, bam, stuff like that. Now, Okuyasu is a bit of an interesting character. When we first introduced him, he is a bad guy, kind of the same way a lot of the Part 3 friends were. The thing about Okuyasu, though, is he's always been belittled and kind of put down by others because of his intelligence. So when Josuke is one of the very few people that ever really respected him and showed him, you know, positive interactions, of course he turns on his brother, funnily enough, and works with the JoJo. Also, Okuyasu's stand is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. His stand, named The Hand, literally deletes matter. Like, he can swipe a wall or something and just delete the wall. I'm starting to sense a trend with some really crazy stands in this part, and I love it. Also, I don't want to forget about Rohan. Rohan is a character that they meet a couple episodes in, and he's also kind of a villain at the start. So Rohan is a manga artist that moved to the little town of Morio to get away from the noise and craziness of big city so that he could focus on his work. And coincidentally, he also managed to get himself a stand, which is also just awesome. So Rohan's stand, Heaven's Door, allows him to turn people into books, and then he can read the book to learn everything that there is about the person. And shoot, he can even go inside and write new sentences in the book, and those become real. Like, if he doesn't want someone to attack him, he can literally write in their book, "Cannot attack Rohan." That is terrifying. Okay, but when talking about the characters of Part 4, there's one character that I absolutely cannot skip, and that is Kira. So Kira is the big bad final boss of this part, and while he doesn't really play much of a role at all for the first third of the series, his presence is felt immensely. Even when he's not in direct conflict with our main characters, he's always in the background doing some really creepy stuff, really scary things, and so you always have this worry that he's going to really do something one of these times, and you're not going to like it, and sure enough, that ends up being true. It turns out Kira also has a stand, and it's named Killer Queen. Now, what it can do is it will turn objects into bombs. Now, that ability alone is pretty terrifying and can be used for some creative things, but we're not done yet.
But wait! dashboard!
Through some shenanigans involving swapping bodies and using the golden arrow, Killer Queen actually gains an additional ability relatively near the end of the series. So Killer Queen's Bite the Dust allows him to plant Killer Queen inside of somebody else and have like a creative custom trigger that has to be tripped in order for the bomb to explode, and then it will reverse time back like an hour. There's a lot more nuance to that, but just be aware that because Kira is in control of how these explosives can go off, and the fact that they can literally be anywhere and you're not really sure what is or is not a bomb or an explosive or something deadly, there's a lot of creative potential there, and Araki does some amazing things with it throughout the story. So this train of all the good elements of part 4 is going to keep on moving because I'm going to talk about some anime specifics. First off, there is a totally different art style for this part of the anime, and I loved it. The basic gist of it is it's a lot cleaner or simpler compared to the previous art styles, so there's not as much detail in like people's muscle masses or in the way that the clothes are, or like the face structure looks. But the kind of contrast that we have, these incredibly vibrant and contrasting colors, which just made every single scene look so appealing. Like, we would get scenes that have bright contrasting yellows and oranges against blues and purples, and it sounds like you might not like it, but when it's actually on the screen and you're moving, it works really well, especially compared to the earlier parts. Like, I didn't really think about it too much when I was doing parts 1 through 3, but when you go back and look at those, there's a lot of browns, greens, or just like colors that are kind of earthy in tone, and they're just not my thing. Also, I don't want to talk about part 4 without mentioning the absolute bangers that is every single opening from this part. Crazy Noisy Bizarre Town, Chase, and Great Days are all just amazing openings that I refuse to skip a single time. All 3 of them were just great, fit the tone of the series so well. Without a doubt, the strongest set of opening themes, or just the music composition in general for the rest of the series. So, there was a lot to love about Diamond is Unbreakable, and not a whole lot I didn't like. And shoot, it just occurred to me now that I kind of forgot to mention that there's aliens and ghosts in this part of the story. You know, because things need to be even crazier than they usually are for JoJo's, am I right? If you were to ask me for my 100% honest opinion in a matter of if there was only one JoJo part that you wanted to watch, what would that one part be? If you're only going to watch one part, make it part 4. I haven't seen Golden Wind yet, so maybe my mind will change when I see that. But right now, this is definitely the peak of JoJo's for me. Like, there's definitely a lot to love here in part 4 if you have seen the previous parts, because it does tie back into some of those events, like with the Golden Arrows and a couple of character developments like that. But it's not completely necessary. Like, if you hopped into this, had no previous understanding of stands or the actual story, or even the JoJo family, I don't think it would really harm the experience that much. So kind of to reiterate, part 4 has my favorite setting, it has my favorite cast of characters, and honestly, it has the best stands so far. Granted, you know, we just got them in part 3, but there were so many incredibly interesting stands that I couldn't help but say that. I kind of hate to say this, but my expectations for part 5 have been set pretty high now. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me later. I'll do my best to keep those expectations in check though. So as you might imagine, in our next JoJo's video, I'll be talking about part 5, Golden Wind. So if you want to stick around to watch that, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on. I try to upload a new review at least every week, so assuming I can finish the anime in time, that will be coming out when it's ready. Until that day though, I have been LootingKyle, and I want you guys to remember, be kind to others, and have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day.